Alright, so now I'm going to continue by putting the derailleurs on, starting with the front derailleur. So this just has a bolt that goes through here, and you just take that off, and you spread it out and it goes across here. And this, of course, is going to damage my paint, but this area will always be covered up by a derailleur. And getting the positioning of this is sometimes tricky. Thankfully this time I can still see some scratches underneath my paint from where the derailleur was before I painted it, so I'll do my best to get it in the same spot as it was before. Put that around there, and then my bolt goes through the back, and just tighten that on. Finger tight to begin with, and then tighten it up with a 9mm socket, although I'm not going to go too tight because it's possible that I may need to adjust this, you know, from side to side, you know, rotating this on here to make sure that I have it in a spot where it's going to shift properly. So I'll just snug this up a little bit with my socket here, like so. And now for the rear derailleur, this goes in here with this little clamp thing which goes through the back here and clamps it onto the frame. And of course this goes on the right hand side of the bike, which is the drive side. I'll just hold this in place and get this bolt finger tight, and then I'll come back again with my 9mm socket and tighten it up. Doing my best to get these two slots lined up as best as possible, and also pushing this bracket in that direction as far as possible. Like so. Now I'll proceed with putting the wheels back on the bike, starting with the front one. And to make sure I get it so it's facing the right way, I look for the indicator on the tire which indicates the direction of travel. Then I put this on here, like so. This is a quick release one, so it tightens on very easily. And I always like to put these quick releases so they're going parallel with a part of the frame, so that it's unlikely that something will come in contact with them and accidentally loosening them off, like so. And then I'll do the same with the back wheel. Now getting this the right way on is easier because we've got the chain rings and they need to go on the same side as the derailleurs on. So let's put that down in here. Now since this bike has horizontal dropouts, on the side that has the derailleur, you want to push your axle as far back as possible into that pocket. And then on the one on this side, it needs to be somewhere there in the middle, such that this wheel is going to be centered between these two parts of the frame here. Before I tighten this up, however, I want to install this kickstand on here. And since I just got a brand new fresh coat of paint on here, I like to protect this. So I'm going to put a little strip of inner tube there, and then I'm going to put this on top. Again, I'm just using electrical tape to hold this in place, although once I've got this on here, the pressure from this will also do a good job for holding it on. So I'm just going to remove this skewer just by holding on to the nut on this side and turning this off. And I'm just being careful to catch the extra spring that's on that side there. So now I'll just hold this up here like that, line these two holes up, stick my skewer through there, hold that in place, and then on this other side I'm going to put my little spring back on, put the nut in there, and then start tightening it back on. Like so. And then after I've got it pretty tight on this side, then I'm just going to look up here to make sure I've got the wheel so it's properly centered between these two parts of the frame. Then I come in here and just press this in against there. And that went in pretty well. It's not going to come out very easily. If it was too loose, I could go back in here, tighten this up a little bit more, and then push it in again, and hopefully that would work. And now with that much attached, I should be able to just pick up this frame, stand it upright, and then put my kickstand down, and it should stand there on its own. Alright, so next I'm going to put the stem and handlebars on, and the way this works is this goes inside that hole, and there's a bolt up here on the top, and when you tighten that, it pulls this wedge in like that, which in turn expands this at the end there, and it grips it in place on the inside of that tube. So I just push that in there as deep as I want it to go, and then I'm just going to line this up with the wheel. And then I just come in here with my Allen key on the top, which this one uses a 6mm Allen key. Now it's starting to get tight. Again, I'm just going to make sure I've got this lined up properly with the wheel. And just tighten this down. Like so. Now I'll insert the seat into there. Now with seats, it's always a good idea to apply some grease to the outside of here, which will help it in the long term from getting seized inside of the bike, which is a real pain that happens to you. I just push that down into there. At this point, I'm not sure what the height will be, but I'll just keep it about there for now. And then there's just this nut and bolt which go in there. So this goes in from the one side, and then this gets screwed on there. Now this is actually not the seat we're going to be using on the bike eventually. We got a brand new one we're going to put on later, but just for getting the bike set up and everything, I'm just going to use this old one on there for now. And this takes a 13mm socket. Now I'm going to put the V-brakes on the front here. So I'll just start by peeling off the painter's tape that I put to protect these very important bare parts here. Then you want to apply some grease to those posts so that those brake arms will run smoothly along there. And then this just gets inserted on there. We want to line this up with the holes that are in there. And I like to always put it on the tightest hole if I can. And that's easiest to achieve if I twist this sideways to get out of my way. And then I put it on this top hole up here. And then I can rotate it and I can feel lots of springiness in there. And then I just take the bolt that goes along with it and tighten it into that hole. Like so. Now I just did the same with the back brakes as well, and I'm just going to align these pads. So I've just loosened this one off here, and I'm going to, just by loosening off this nut here, I've loosened this off, and I'm just going to press this in. So I've got it so it's pretty well positioned and centered on the rim here, and then I'm just going to tighten this back up again. And then to get it really fully tight, I'm just going to grip onto it like this and apply some torque. And then test it out, and it still looks like it's in a good spot. And I'll do the same for the other three pads. So last night I finished by installing the brake levers on either side, and these go on very easily. They're just a bolt that's here that you loosen off with an Allen key, and then it gets slid on. And then you just tighten it back up, and you can use one of the grips to make sure you've got it the right distance from the edge. So these brake levers are a combination of brake levers as well as index shifters. It's all, one single unit, and I figured, having the index shifting would be the easiest for my girlfriend for shifting this bike. So that's what I decided to use on there. The cables that were already connected to these shifters appear to be in pretty good condition, so I'm just going to try and use those. If I have any issues, then I can always come back and switch them out. But I am going to apply some lube to them. So basically what you want to do when you're doing that, if you already have the cable housing on and you want to apply lube, you can just find the sections where there aren't. You just pull all the little segments to one end, and then you can just apply a little bit of lube right here. And then you can slide all this stuff, or slide this segment at least over here, and then I can apply lube here. And then slide the noodle, this part here, up. And then apply some lube in here. And then do the same with the other cables, so the same with this one here. Alright, so now that I've got all my cables lubed up, I'm going to start by connecting this front brake one. That should be one of the easiest ones. So I'll just slide this cable all the way in here. Now notice I've tightened up this barrel adjuster and put it all the way in, so that after I get this installed, I'll be able to loosen it out, to push the barrel adjuster out and tighten up the cable to make fine adjustments to get it where I want it. Then I'll just slide this noodle to the end here into the cable housing. This piece here goes into the brake, and then the rubber boot goes on, and then I'm going to pull these guys together, and then this cable is going to get clamped on here. So we'll just loosen this bolt here. It just takes a 5mm Allen key, and then I should be able to tuck this cable in between the nut and the washer that's underneath it. And I'll just pull these two arms together, and then I'll release it off a little bit so that there's a little bit of a gap between the brake pads and the wheel, and then I'll tighten that on. I'll just squeeze the brakes and see how it feels. This boot actually should be stuck on there like that. That feels pretty good so far. I'm going to come back again and align these. I'll flip the bike over and I'll align these so I've got, you know, even spacing on either side of the pads by adjusting the springs on either side. But for now, that cable is connected and I'm happy with that. So that concludes part 2 of this video series. Stay tuned for part 3 where I'm going to finish up routing all the cables. Please leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of this video, and thanks for watching.